Have some fun today? Tell me when it's, what time is it? This is Pacific time, right? So this is what, 11 o'clock Pacific? What time? Wait a second. What time is it? Somebody must know here.
11 Pacific.
All right, 11:01, so we're going to get ready to go? And then what do we go till? Like 4 o'clock this afternoon? Is this like a 5-hour marathon about data centers? No? All right. So we can start as the people coming in. So good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Evanko. I'm principal engineer at BRUNS-PAK, and we're going to talk about some data centers and what we're seeing change recently about what's transforming, why is it transforming, and the like. So today what we're going to talk about, these are the topics, and we're going to discuss some things, and I'm going to give you what we're seeing independently out there as we are part of some of the larger consulting firms like the Deloittes and the Accentures in delivering these data center solutions. So we're going to give you an independent view as to what's coming down. But what we're seeing is the change, the transformation, and it has been very significant in 2014 and beyond. I've been doing this for 35 years, even though I don't look that old, but 35 years as a paranoid schizophrenic conservative engineer, I have never seen this industry change so much, and it's kind of fascinating. Scalability, reliability, network security. This is, by the way, the number one element we're going to be talking about today is the network security issue. We're going to talk about the data center hybrid solution. A show of hands, how many people have heard about data center hybrid solution? People, yeah? So it's getting around there. It's kind of interesting. It used to be the data center itself. So we're going to talk about, these are the elements. We're going to get into this. Facility infrastructure is certainly one element, but energy efficiency, hardware, cloud, disaster recovery, co-location, migration, relocation, software, modularity, the government. How many government people do we have here? Show of hands? All right, I don't want to be arrested by the time we're done. All right, so we have some of that. Communication network, service level agreements, personnel containers, OpEx versus CapEx. So the key is, if I'm a stockholder or a trustee, how do I optimize all this? That's going to be the question of what we're going to go through. So this is what we're going to go through. It's going to be 5 hours and we're going to turn the heat up. No, it's not. This is what we're going to go through. See, everybody gets nervous when you lock them in a room. We're going to turn the heat up and nobody's going anywhere. Yeah, we're going to talk about the elements, the 15 elements that we talk about. What's causing the transformation? Define total cost of ownership. This is really becoming a big play. Big play. What is the total cost of ownership of a data center? CapEx versus OpEx versus agreements versus penalties, and the recent U.S. government initiative regarding data center security. I thought it was interesting this morning, the keynote speaker, data center security, data security. Who's paying for this? We're going to get into this anyhow. I don't want to turn this in, and we won't turn it into a political conversation yet. We'll leave that for the last 5 minutes. And then November, December, by the way, we're going to go over an example of a company that just suffered some of this data security. What did that mean to the company? And then we're going to talk about some of the questions. So the point is, what I'm going to try to do is construct a story. Tell a story. What is the story of the data centers? And ultimately, we're going to culminate with what I think a graphic picture it looks like. So let's talk about the elements first off. There they are graphically. This is, in our opinion, what the elements of a data center solution are. And wow, has it changed. Has it changed? I can't believe it now when I think about it. Yeah, there's facility infrastructure, raised floor generators, but if you're thinking, if I'm a stockholder, or if I'm a trustee, or if I'm a taxpayer, I want to understand, yeah, I understand you need a data center facility. How does energy efficiency play into this? What does computer hardware planning play into the optimization of my data center? How does cloud play? What does disaster recovery mean to me? Do I need one? Do I need synchronous data? What does co-location play? Why does it play? Why would it? Does it all play or not play? Migration, relocation. If I'm going to do this, how does that get accomplished? Computer software. By the way, have you seen the recent agreements that are coming out now with Microsoft and like? Some of these large companies and institutions are saying no more. We're not buying 400 licenses in our company. We're going to negotiate for one massive agreement. wow, the impact of software licensing is going down. That's a trend. This is all about data center efficiency. This is happening now. Modularity, scalability, absolutely. The bottom line is, as you heard the keynote speaker, you don't want to go and build a superstructure that's something for 15 years. To me, that's horse feathers. I'm cheap. I'm a paranoid schizophrenic conservative engineer, as I told you. I believe I go to Walmart, no matter what ends up happening. If my wife didn't dress me in the morning, I wouldn't dress. The point is this: I don't want to pay for something for 15 years down the line. You should. You shouldn't be building these structures that are 15-year solutions. They're not. They need to be modular and scalable. And then we're going to talk about communications network, service level agreements, personnel, CapEx versus OpEx, containers, and government. So I'm going to take a little step by and talk about some highlights of each one of these elements. What does it mean? What does it mean? So when we talk about facility infrastructure, obviously you have your architectural element, your civil element, your electrical element. These are all the architectural facility elements that I have to consider. Fire protection, mechanical. Mechanical, why do I want to pay for cooling? Point made this morning. You know, you heard about the PUE, 1.9, maybe 1.5, maybe 1.1. How about 1.08? Why should I pay for cooling? Again, this is one element. Think of it, one of 15 that you talk about. Security, site. When we talk about structural, geographical regional considerations, southwest hurricanes, west earthquakes. How do I go and deal with this? If I'm coming up with, think about it. I've been to board presentations. If you haven't been there, you've got to be there one of these days. To be on a board of some of these major corporations, these Fortune 100, that's a job you want to get. Because it reminds you of Mel Brooks. He's my hero, but by the way, I'm getting on a board meeting. Because I don't think they really grasp everything that's going on, but they want to understand, what are you doing? What are you doing? How much does it cost? What's the risk? How are you managing the risk? And what's the schedule? So this is one element. How are you optimizing my investment? Are you going to be considering putting your data center in Miami, where in fact you have hurricanes? Or are you going to be up in Seattle, Washington, where there's earthquakes? Or are you going to mitigate that? So locations and all these elements come into play. So that's one element of optimizing it. Needless to say, if you put yourself from a mechanical standpoint in a geographic region that's north, say Minnesota, God forbid Minnesota, I don't know, not to get Minnesota people, or if you're up in Canada, you know, the igloos, you don't really have to pay for cooling too much. Right? We don't want to pick on our Canadian friends, but we've been up there. If you've never been to Edmonton, you know, I couldn't find it with a map, but they tell me it gets to 60 below zero Fahrenheit up there during the winter. Why would you pay for cooling? Right? That's a good deal. Well, you got to live there. But anyhow, let's talk about the second element. All right, so we talked about the data center facility. Now let's talk about energy efficiency. Big time coming up. ASHRAE 9.9, yep, 80-degree inlet temperatures coming in. Thermodynamics is a good thing. Contrary to what people believe, us engineers are not bad people. Contrary to what my wife says. We have a use in society. It's all about thermodynamics and physics now, right? Bring the air temperature, 80-degree inlet temperature. By the way, you've just hit another element where you're going to save your company tremendous amounts of money. Why pay for electrical consumption for mechanical cooling? I wouldn't. I want to drive my utilization. As a matter of fact, the gentleman referred to Quincy, Washington. Yes, we did deploy a data center there that over 93% of the year, it utilizes outside air for free cooling. 93% of the year, we deployed a heat wheel technology. It's kind of fascinating. Why don't I use my outside ambient temperatures when I can go and cool? CFD, computational fluid dynamics. Again, if you haven't used these models, use them. That'll tell you what's better for you. Hot aisle containment, cold aisle containment. Get these CFD models and deploy them. Heat wheel, there's a technology right there. It has a way to bring the outside air in and cool. If it's 58 degrees outside, why am I paying for cooling? And by the way, these CFD models, and you can use heat wheel technology even in places like Miami, down south, Phoenix, Arizona, because what happens during the evening time? The temperatures get respectable. By the way, DC, 400 volt AC, DC, absolutely. You want to bring your voltages up. DCIM, I absolutely want to do that. This is all about energy efficiency. Think about it. If I can take a server, we'll take an HP ProLiant for that matter, and deploy it to a rack, the rack now has the ability to understand that I need X amount of CFM, cubic feet per minute, and X amount of static pressure that just increased. By the way, it's talking to the variable frequency drive on your mechanical system. That's neat. It's increasing static pressure in CFM, and all you've done is basically brought cooling on demand. Virtualization of servers, that's why I get a little bit hung up, as I won't go into my paranoid schizophrenia. But by the way, if I haven't virtualized my servers, we had a customer of 30,000 servers, didn't virtualize. I say here, PUE, you can go jump in a lake. PUE, utilization efficiency. If you haven't virtualized some of the applications that can be virtualized, how can you be efficient? Anyhow, let's go on. Higher efficiency computing equipment. It's there. And March 2014, by the way, this is now passed the U.S. House of Representatives, if you haven't seen this. The United States government is talking about data center efficiency. This is now passed. They are going to, in essence, have for every 3 data centers, 1. They're done. They're done with consuming it. This is passed now. And you know our government, and nothing personal back there, we won't turn that discussion to that, but they're getting traction now in efficiency. Watch what happens. LEED. By the way, there are new data center guidelines for LEED. This is new in the last couple of years. If you haven't seen it, Leadership in Energy Efficiency Design, you should make sure you're aware of it. These are now ways that data centers can actually be reviewed. Written to save dollars and be more green. Office of Management Budget to create a strategy. Department of Energy and the EPA to study server and data center efficiency trends. By the way, it's coming. Because the United States government estimates that approximately 2.2% of total electrical consumption demand in the United States is related to a data center function. That's pretty big. So the government now is getting involved in this saying, wait a second, that's a large chunk. New data center energy practitioner program, and there's going to be new metrics coming out. Watch it. If you're running with a data center, watch it. Let's talk about hardware. This is the third element of 15. Higher efficiency hardware, you're going to believe it. Because think about it. I'm a board member. I'm a stockholder. I'm a trustee. I want the comprehensive energy efficient solution, the total data center solution. So my hardware better be efficient. By the way, does it have a 3-year ROI? What about the new flash storage announcements that are out there? If you haven't seen it, it's coming. The densities are extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Some of you folks, have show of hands, anybody heard about it? Flash technology? Woo! Boy, you guys and gals are a bright group. This is a sharp group of people.
I have a question about higher efficiency.
Sure.
Try as we may, it's very hard to get IT vendors to produce efficient equipment. If you look at Cisco, they're probably the worst in the marketplace. They hog power. If I compare switches between Brocade and Cisco, it's really no comparison.
Very good point.
Okay, so who beats these guys up to produce more efficient equipment? Because I tell you, we've got in every organization there are Cisco bigots who refuse to accept any other brand of equipment other than Cisco, and who don't beat up Cisco.
Very good point. The discussion is all about who makes sure, who guides these manufacturers to make sure that they are efficient, that you're not dealing with salespeople. There are independent groups that really put a lot of pressure on them, a la Gartner, a la Forrester. Those independent consulting groups put some pressure, but you are absolutely correct. There are bigots on some equipment that people just feel comfortable with. But that's a good point. So think of your vision today, right? It's growing. We're saying 15 elements come here, and you can get wrapped around the axles as true engineers on just one of these elements. Let's keep going on. We're going to come back to that. Virtualization, we talked about high-performance computing impact. Hey, if I'm running 67 kW per rack, and by the way, we planned them with some of these universities, 67 kW per rack, that's a lot of heat. We do know that we're using chilled water. We do know from a thermodynamic standpoint, you cannot satiate that with airside demand. How are you doing that? And then scalability and modularity. You want to make sure you can scale it and be modular. Let's go on to the fourth one, the cloud, right? Wow, this is a great topic, the cloud. The cloud, here we go. Managed services, internal versus external cloud, right? There's all types of options to it. Migration to the cloud. When you go and migrate your application to the cloud, what happens? Where's the data going? Impact of returns. Moves, adds, and changes when you're in the cloud. Is that a change order to your base contract as you continue to go? Troubleshooting. By the way, item G, if you haven't seen this, there was a cloud provider in San Diego, 2013, that declared bankruptcy. Said everybody out in 30 days. I don't know if you saw that, but this is, you can Google it. A company went bankrupt, declared a cloud provision, said we're going out of business. Everybody has 30 days to get their equipment out. Now, not being from Harvard or Penn State back there or some of the other victims that we have in the audience, how do you think you're going to get all your applications and your hardware out in 30 days? I don't think so. This has sent the shot across the bow, and we're going to talk about this later. Who's providing my services? What happens if that provider has a problem financially? Let's go on. Downtime, who pays? Woo! I believe we're going to see this is one of the most biggest transformations that I've seen, is the whole issue of who pays for downtime is going to come front and center. I think you're going to see a change in the industry significantly now moving forward, and I'll get into it later on. Again, I did an MBA, and I'm proud to say I never got out of law school, but we won't go into that right now. Security breach, who pays? Who pays for that? If your data goes, young Herb Villas over there, he's got a lot of money. If his data goes up on the screen, who's paying for that security? You heard the keynote speaker this morning talk about that. Terms and conditions. By the way, legal beagles, you're going to see them all over the place now, in my opinion. I see them now when we're discussing contracts. We're designing and building a data center. We have some going to co-location. We have some going to cloud. I'm seeing that the legal beagles are really getting involved in this now. Senator Menendez, New Jersey. We have any New Jersey folks here in the audience? Young Herb, I think you're from New Jersey. He's got a lot of money. He doesn't want to admit it. But anyhow, Senator Menendez, right? This is just new. New legislation, 2014. There will be fines. Fines now. Everybody's heard about the Target issue that came out? Menendez is now taking the law forward to say, we're done. If this ever happens again, we are going to have the ability, the United States government, to fine these companies, sue them for data breaches because of all our data. This is new. And you know how the government, we don't want to get into that. Speed to delivery of application and candidacy of application. So there's a lot of positives with the cloud going forward. Let's talk about disaster recovery. What is it, hot or cold? What's my recovery time objectives? Internal disaster recovery data centers versus exterior leased. What should I do? Should I mirror my data? Should I have 3 of them? Leased and terms and conditions for availability. Government regulations for uptime. By the way, this is coming. This is coming. There's going to be actual government mandates about uptime. They're not going to tell you that your surgical room can go down now when you're doing open heart surgery. They're not going to say that that's permissible. They're not going to allow banking institutions to take your data and then it goes away, they're trading. This is going to really open up. What does that mean? Co-location. Leased data center constructed space makes a lot of sense for certain applications. If I know I have some applications coming in that I'm only going to need for 2 or 3 years, I don't want to design and build and construct my data. And the data isn't that critical. Why would I go and design and build my own facility infrastructure and tie up the CapEx dollars? CapEx schedule of delivery minimized. Return on investment. By the way, if you have an application that's rolling that's not that critical for under 3 years, I'd do it. Again, I'm not a Harvard graduate, but if I have a return on investment less than 3 years, I'm doing this. Other tenants. Whoa, whoa. Who's in my data center? If somebody takes my data, and this is coming forefront now, if somebody borrows, I should use the politically correct word, permanently borrows my data, who's responsible for that? Menendez is now, these guys are really getting into it. Security breach, who pays? You have young Mr. Snowden running around, right? Wherever he is. I think he's over in Russia still. I think he borrowed some data, permanently borrowed some data. Is that good, bad, indifferent? I'm telling you, these are the things that come. Terms and conditions. This is coming, and Menendez is there. This is new legislation in 2014. Yes?
Isn't co-location, cloud, and virtualization exactly the same thing, just different parts?
Yeah, it could be. Could be. Co-location, again, there's different parts. Co-location in definition is, let's just say, a data center warehouse space. that you can bring your computers in, your server, that,
Leasing space.
yeah.
Co-location or cloud is the same thing, but.
Well, cloud can be inferred to be managed services, right? Somebody's actually managing them. It's going out there to the cloud. Somebody's going to actually manage the applications, manage the network and like. And virtualization is a way that you can take maybe 10 applications and consolidate it down into maybe one server, as opposed to 10 servers.
Wouldn't all those same things apply in every single one of those cases?
Could be not that. Some people just want to, I just want data center warehouse space. I'm going to bring in my own computers. I'm going to manage it myself. Okay. I want to go to the cloud. I want you to manage everything. I don't care what servers, where it's going. I'm going to do it myself. You do it for me. I'm going to pay you a check. And the virtualization is an internal strategy to that. But you're right. It could be across all. And the true partner of equal financial stability, again, mark my words, and I haven't been right on too many things, this is going to be big time. I indicated that the 2013 center went bankrupt. There is tremendous financial stress with some of these companies now are being outsourced. So think about it. If I'm a trustee or I'm a stockholder, and you're telling me my data, which is all critical, went to a third party, if that person goes belly up, are you telling me I'm going under? Are you telling me I can't process? Watch. Watch what happens. Migration, relocation. By the way, if I'm going to move and go to co-location, should I move existing, buy, or lease? What should I do? Asset swap outs. If I'm going to do a new data center, why would I take all my data center, migrate, and move it? Why wouldn't I just do the ROI 3 years out and actually bring new stuff in? General hardware lifecycle, 3 to 4 years. Maximize my uptime. How do I maximize my uptime? Multiple phases of this, by the way. By the way, you're not migrating this all in one day. Get back to the San Diego folks. I'm bankrupt. You have 30 days to get out of Dodge. I don't think so. I don't think so. Oh, you might, but there could be a very big impact to your operation. Consolidation strategy, physical cost versus planning costs, obviously when you migrate and relocate, and impacts of the network. Let's talk about software. I did indicate to you this is a big trend that we're seeing out throughout the world right now. Big negotiations on corporate procurement effort to leverage one massive licensing contract. This has saved in certain companies $50, $80 million a year without doing anything per se. They've gone instead, some of these gigantic corporations or universities that have multiple licensing agreements, they package them and gone back and said, we want one. Massive savings to them. Single point of failure consideration versus mirroring. Impacts of hardware. So if I go with software, am I redundant? Can I mirror all my data? If you're coming up with this solution, it better do that. And what does downtime mean to me? Let's talk about modularity, scalability. I agree with the keynote speaker on this point. I don't agree with them on a lot of other points. I agree with them in this. You better make sure it's modular and scalable. If you're telling me that you're going to do a watts per square foot and design and build me something for a 15-year solution, I object. That's a waste of time. That's a waste of money. This thing should be able to scale with different technologies. So you want to make sure it can scale with hardware, software, telecommunication facilities, and service level group. Scale with growth. You don't want to be having 5 2-megawatt generators there for the future. That's a waste of time. It's got to be able to scale. And there was a project done that we recently completed that they could scale both their power plant and their data center raised floor area in modules because they didn't know which direction they were going to go. They actually have 10 building blocks on each level to go either high density or further. Defray CapEx dollars, by the way, when needed across the board, and scale without interruption, reliability transformation. Let's talk about the network, and I think this is going to be one of the biggest things that's going to be dominating in the next couple of years. Redundant, isolated paths, multiple carriers, data breach. I'm tired of listening to it. Data breach. Who pays? There are going to be people paying for this in the future now. It was a big joke when we read that Obama had his cell phone hijacked. No, that's not a joke. That's the top government official theoretically in the world. They got it. Your bank accounts, your prescriptions, your transformation on anything, your educational background, your records. This is going to be who pays and who is responsible, in my opinion, is going to be the transformation that you're going to see in co-location contracts, cloud contracts, anybody who's going to outsource or touch your data. Contractors. We're going to give you an example later on. The power of the cloud. iPhone. Wow. Yeah, it's true. This iPhone is amazing, right? I go to the cloud. Well, because all I want to know is whether my popcorn's hot or not. I don't really care if somebody hijacks it. You know, if somebody goes and takes my data about how my popcorn's doing, irrelevant. Somebody takes my data about banking. Somebody takes my data. It's kind of interesting. We had a conversation with the banks. And the banks, our corporate banks, large, to be unnamed, came back and said, we take no responsibility for cyber fraud. I said, what? People can come in and take money out of your accounts, and we, as the bank, are no longer responsible for that. This is one of the largest banks in America. I said, how is that possible? We're trusting you. Basically, he says, this is the way, he says, the cyber criminals are ahead of us now, and this is a uniform law. You have to take out additional insurances to secure your accounts if somebody attacks their network and takes it out. This is where we are today. So when we talk about that, who pays, who is responsible, and by the way, this happened because we actually had a cyber attack on one of our corporate accounts. And thank God it wasn't, a marginal amount of money that our accounting people picked up. And they said, well, first off, we're not responsible. By the way, when you read the T's and C's, we're not responsible for anything up to $3 million in a corporate account. Think about that. The impact of network loss. What does that mean if it goes down? Now let's talk about service level agreements. Internal versus external. By the way, when you go out and you have service level agreements, who's going to pay if they're not met? Government imposed guidelines for forms, HIPAA, right? The medical people have seen. There are restrictions now about data. But now what's coming is the fines and the penalties and the costs. So what, in my opinion, you're going to see is costs for third-party providers starting to go through the roof. Because once you say, and by the way, we had a customer do this hybrid data center solution, to be unnamed, big customer, wanted to take 8,000 square feet of their data center. It's a 50,000 square foot data center solution. 8,000 was a candidate for a co-location. They went to the co-location provider, said, here's my deal. You're going to get 8,000 square feet of it for the terms and conditions with one provision. He says, what's that? He says, I want you to sign that if you take me down during the next 3 years, you're going to pay me $12 million for each event. He says, $12 million. He says, yeah, that's what it's going to cost me. It's going to cost them $12 million each event. So in essence, the co-location provider said, there's no way we're signing that. The only thing we're going to sign is give you a month's free rent, which is $100,000 at the month, and that's it. He says, if you want us to pay for your downtime, you can take your cost and multiply it times 10 per month. That's how it's getting now. Now we're getting into the short strokes. Not 99.999, not 5 aces, 3 jacks, 4 queens, and I don't know what's going to go on. We're telling you, you're going to pay. You take me out, somebody takes my data. That was the next conversation, but they never got to that. So what does so when we talk about government is imposing, the transformation, this is going to be big. In my opinion, I'm seeing it right now. What does 99.99 availability mean when I go down? In essence, nothing. You're going to tell me I'm in the 0.001% when I go down? I say horse feathers. Again, I'm not the sharpest undergraduate engineer in the world, but that's horse feathers. That was why I never got out of law school. Don't tell me that. I just want to know one thing. If I am in that 0.1001%, you pay. And this is going to be a transformation coming up. Moves and changes without interruption. How do I do that with my service level agreements? Finally, personnel. Employee versus contract personnel. By the way, this is getting more data. If you have contract people in there, that's the trend. We don't want to hire anybody. Let's go get contractors. What happens? What happens if you permanently borrow that data as a contract person? Mr. Snowden, he was a contract person, I believe. Who's liable for this? He's camping out in Russia. Client worldwide, as a world terms personnel solution. By the way, one company that we work with, gigantic company, they decided that in order to minimize costs, they built 3 network operating centers. 1 in New Jersey, 1 in Belgium, 1 in Singapore. The reason being, they have 8-hour shifts to monitor their network worldwide. They don't have 24-hour shifts any longer. It cost them multi-millions of dollars to build these facilities, but in essence, as one shift is going, the other shift comes on. That's their normal working hours, 8 to 4, around the world. So this is truly an around-the-world type of operation. Efficiency metrics and data breaches. That's going to be big. CapEx versus OpEx. Should I build anew? CapEx plus the schedule? CapEx dollars, right? Build new option now. Can I OpEx? So the point is this, CapEx is your capital dollars. Why do I want to take $10 million out of my bank account and pay? I'd rather pay an operating cost, OpEx, right? Why would I do this? Well, it's the thing, cloud co-location or OpEx costs. That's operating costs. I don't have to tie up my $10 million or $20 million or $50 million. I'll take an operating cost and just take it. That's better for me from an expense balance sheet standpoint, right? 2008, why? Why are we seeing such a trend for this? In our opinion, 2008 to 14, the economic crisis worldwide has been the most significant since the 30s. So everybody wants to go and save dollars. Save dollars. Save CapEx dollars. I just want to do it. What's the trend? Operating costs, co-location, cloud, outsourced services. I'm saving a bottom line, right? But what's the risk? 2014 and beyond. Now we're starting to see it. And by the way, internal co-location. So I'm going to give you some other examples. Containers play into this. Why wouldn't I just throw a portable data center out there? Why do I need to design and build it? There are certain applications that are good for that. Speed of delivery, you got to watch this. There's a little bit of discussion about that. If you put a container on your site, you're building a structure there. Remember the old prefabricated buildings, modular buildings? You can't throw it on your site. So you just got to be cautious with that. Prefabricated structure in compliance with local building codes. Workflow, services, building addition, government exempt. By the way, if you're a governmental agency, you don't have to go for permits. That's why the government agencies do tend to deploy this. You don't have to go for local zoning and planning board. But if you're a private enterprise or a university and you're going down to your building board, you better get down there first before you drop that container down there for a permanent structure. 15, government. The government. This is an element now, right? We're not going to turn this into a discussion. There will be no questions taken on this. The new data center energy efficiency, March 2014. By the way, the government's saying we will consolidate. And if the government's saying we're going to consolidate 3 to 1, why wouldn't you do it? If you have multiple data center complexes out there, why wouldn't you do it? I rest assured your CIO is going to be seeing this. It's all about energy efficiency. It's all about consolidation. It's all about reducing the overall total cost of energy. Total cost of ownership. The cost and liability of data infringement, big. Government saying enough. Government is saying, by the way, Snowden, that was a possible world war that you almost caused. Is that something in an extreme point? Yeah. That wasn't good. You know, if you had good and bad, that wasn't good. When they're seeing, our allies are seeing who we trust and who we don't. Not good. The repercussions of that are significant. And as it was discussed this morning, the data security going forward is going to, you better believe you're going to have your data real close to you. That institutions are going to be responsible for their data. You better believe it. Worldwide government are experiencing the impacts of data processing. Currently, U.S. regulations exist for banking, healthcare, and financial. But watch what happens. I'm going to give you an example later on. So, summary, the 2014 Data Center Transformation Solution will optimize 15 elements. Don't worry, you only have 3 more hours as we go through this. I'm going to be no, I'm kidding you. Let's do it. What's causing the 2014 transformation? In our opinion, downturn. This 2008 to 2014 downturn has put tremendous pressure on capital dollars. What's the irony? If you've ever seen these big corporations' balance sheets, what do they have?